Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this Fronde webinar on leading the cloud journey in your organisation. I'm James Valentine, the CTO at Fronde, and thanks for taking the time to listen to this today. I'm going to run through our Fronde's thoughts on this topic, but please submit questions via the sidebar tool so that we can look, and if we can, we'll answer those towards the end. Further ado, let's get going. So just a little bit about Fronde to talk about to give you some background as to why we're covering this topic. I guess really it's because we've been moving people to the cloud for many years now, and we work with a range of really prominent cloud partners and wanted to sort of bring to bear through this webinar some of that experience. And really it's an important time to be doing this because while businesses are in constant change, really at the moment we're seeing that technology is in fundamental transformation. IT executives are facing unprecedented change in virtually every aspect of what they do, with the trends around virtualization, the ever-increasing moves to cloud, massive data increases in data growth, device proliferation where the average knowledge worker has some 3.3 devices themselves, internal IT pressures, desires to go green, the consumerization of IT, this idea that employees are wanting to use in their jobs the kind of tools that they get to use at home and can't understand why enterprise IT systems have to be as hard to use as they traditionally have been. And then resourcing, so across Australasia CEOs are concerned about the availability of key skills and resources. And yet the big challenge here, of course, is that the status quo isn't sustainable. We see demand rising exponentially on IT teams, that IT resources are just simply not growing. People are being asked to do more with less, and really the clock is ticking. That time that all IT organisations are having to race to keep up with competition and race to keep up with demands on their business. And really, one of the big technology transitions is this shift to the cloud, and what we're seeing is really the whole scale of cloud computing. And this session today is to really give you some thoughts on how that looks and how you can tackle it, because it is a dominant trend, and it really delivers significant benefits to organisations. Many will say, would highlight the cost savings that cloud can offer, but really what we see is that the biggest benefits that cloud brings is business agility, the fact that you can now do things so much faster than you could before, that you can bring to bear new technologies at a much faster pace, and that is what really drives true business transformation. When we look out in the industry and we talk with customers and we help them with their journeys to transform their business, what we're seeing is sort of 4 key areas that are moving to the cloud first. So CRM, ERP, mail and collaboration, infrastructure, storage and compute. And really these are the key workloads that are shifting, and we've been working with customers to move these kind of workloads to the clouds for a number of years. So the key thing here though, and the big challenge that you've got, is that organisations are finding that within their business people are already going around their IT department. And so the big challenge you have is either you lead the change in your business or you become irrelevant. And what we see is that many times when we've been selling cloud solutions, we've actually been selling to the head of sales or the head of customer service, and that's because line of business, sort of business units are finding that they can completely avoid IT in many cases and start implementing their own technology. And so really what I wanted to sort of give you was that idea that there's a real impetus here to be leading the cloud journey within your business, because otherwise you are going to be irrelevant. So when it comes to adopting new technology and the transformation, I really like to sort of put forward that there are some key tenets you should adopt as a way to think about this transformation. The first is this idea of cloud first and mobile first. As a key principle, when selecting new technologies, you want to be looking at cloud platforms in the first instance, and you want to be making sure that any application, any technology set is mobile ready, that it's mobile first, that you think of mobile users, be they internal or external, as a first-class citizen as your primary target. The second idea is this idea that you aren't a snowflake, and by that what I mean is that although your business in itself is unique and special and has special characteristics, don't let yourself fall into the trap that you have some unique exception that means that things like cloud, things like mobile aren't relevant for you. There are always going to be, every organisation is going to have its own challenges and obstacles, but really you shouldn't think that where you're sitting that you're in an insurmountable position. So don't try and paint yourself into being something incredibly unique and special. You'll find that what the majority of people are doing is going to work in many cases. Another one is to make sure you give yourself and your employees device flexibility. Make sure that you are not choosing technologies that lock you into a particular device or operating system. Start exploring new form factors to consume the IT that you deliver. Really think creatively about what is the right form factor, and that doesn't just mean that you start. I mean, in some places we see a lot of customers who have gone and wholesale rolled out tablet devices, for example. But I think what we're seeing now is that many people are finding that tablets aren't always the best technology either. That actually sometimes a keyboard is quite useful. So interesting to see people looking at things like Chrome devices and other kinds of interesting compute devices as new ways of serving up IT. Another sort of principle is really to not be so scared of change. Change isn't as scary as it sounds, and many people have avoided making some significant changes in technology because they're really worried about user adoption, or they're really worried that it just won't work in their business, that their users will revolt, that it just won't work. I think that in a way that used to be something of the case, that when, say, Microsoft Word changed and introduced the ribbon toolbar, for example, there was some disruption. But actually, these days, people are quite used to rapid change in the technology they use. Their mobile phones change quite regularly. So they're actually much more amenable to change than they used to be. So don't see it as a reason not to try something. Also, what we see, don't let the 5% dictate the 95%. So we see many times people will let a very small population of their users dictate the transformation or prevent the transformation of the remaining 95%. So certainly bear that in mind. Right, so now what I want to go through is a number of challenges that we see get surfaced when customers are looking to embark upon a cloud journey, and typically how we look to overcome those. So a really classic one is data sovereignty. Our data must be in country, our data must be in our own data center. You can't trust other people. It's a pretty common objection, and really in many cases though it's actually a bit of a red herring. So in terms of how to solve these challenges, the first and most fundamental thing to do is to distinguish privacy and security from sovereignty, because many times people will use the word sovereignty when in fact they mean privacy or security, and particularly when many people will say, oh, we have customer data, therefore we have sovereign data, and that's not the same thing. So privacy of data is important, but it isn't dictated to by the actual location of it. So really make sure you understand what challenge you're putting forward and what you're trying to solve. Once you move on from that, it's really important to perform a proper risk assessment, because it's really easy to think of all the terribly bad things that could happen if your data were to be hosted in a public cloud platform, potentially in another country. But actually, when you evaluate the risk of those events occurring against the very real risks of having computers in your own data center in your own office, you start to quickly see that theoretical risks where you've seceded some control are usually taken over by the much higher security, reliability and availability that a cloud platform has. And then finally, if it's still proving a challenge in some areas, really look to segregate projects to make progress. So if there are parts of your business where moving quickly to an offshore cloud platform is going to be hard because of the location, find areas where it's really easy, where you're going to get some quick wins. And a really good example here would be development and test workloads, or public websites, or anything which is really pretty clearly not going to have sovereign data concerns. And to give you an example of a customer that Fronde has worked with in the health area, they wanted to use Salesforce.com to store health records, and many people said to them, oh, your data is sovereign. In fact, what they did is they went and they evaluated properly what the legislation said and determined that actually their main concerns were privacy, and then they actually spoke to the relevant bodies just to confirm their understanding, and they got confirmation that as long as the data was stored privately, the actual location of the data wasn't that important. So do make sure that you go through that process, and you'll find that you actually get the ability to leverage cloud platforms. The second challenge is preserving legacy investment. So this idea we can't change everything to the cloud. Many people think that they're going to have to throw away everything they've done in the past all at once and make this wholesale shift to the cloud. And whilst for some organisations that may actually be appropriate, really, I mean, pragmatically, this is a transition that won't happen overnight. You are very few customers that we have will do a wholesale transition of every single thing all at once to the cloud. Rather, what they look to do is to build a prioritised roadmap, look and see where you can get some value from quickly moving to the cloud. And you'll definitely find some low-hanging fruit in your business, particularly when it comes to workforce productivity, where you can make that happen. And then if you really are making that shift, what you can look to do is to cloud deliver traditional desktop applications. So what this means is basically serving up some new applications purely by the browser from, say, a Google Apps or a NetSuite Salesforce. And then for the traditional desktop apps that you haven't yet modernized, using technology like Citrix, on running on Amazon to deliver those applications and publish them down to the browser. So we've done that with a service we call the Fronde Cloud Workspace, which really looks to unify both the cloud-ready and the traditional desktop applications, all published through the browser and mobile devices. Another important one is to understand the cost of status quo. Make sure that, yeah, you've got an existing investment, but what is the actual cost of keeping that running? Because simply the fact that your agreement that you have with a provider lasts another year and a half, you may find in some cases that actually ceasing to use that service and actually switching immediately to a cloud provider will actually give you a better total cost of ownership. Sure, you're still paying for something potentially in some places you're not using, but actually the overall TCO might actually stack up pretty well. So don't think that that's a barrier in every case. But really what we see most of our customers doing is looking to make that progressive transition and get some benefits first. The third challenge is the we're too late to the party challenge, that many users have already gone around them, that they're already using things like Dropbox or their own CRM platforms that they've built up just purely out of frustration that IT couldn't respond to their needs. So in terms of how to solve this, the first thing is to build trust. Depending on how much on the back foot you are, it really is going to be a bit of a hearts and mind exercise. And for that reason, IT executives need to really pick their battles and be open-minded. If you find that people are have gone around what you wanted and you're already using a cloud platform that you didn't mandate, first understand why they've done it, then also understand what is really the immediate issue of them doing that. Because you don't want to pick a battle over something that's actually relatively inconsequential and therefore get even further on the back foot. And in doing so, what that means is really what you want to be doing is to demonstrate value, not policy. It's no use, your business users will get incredibly frustrated if you simply turn up and tell them they can't do it. What you have to do is to help them see the value that you as an IT organization bring and that you can respond to their needs with new cloud platforms in an innovative way. What we also see some customers doing is to decentralize some IT capability. This is particularly true with things like Salesforce.com, where rather than having the CRM administrator sit within the IT function, many of our customers are actually moving that administration function to sit within, say, the sales or service organization, making it so that that person is available to the business to help the business rapidly configure and evolve the platform. So look and see whether that's an appropriate way of both building bridges and also being more responsive to the users that you have. Another common concern and challenge is cost uncertainty. One of the beautiful things of obviously a cloud platform is the pay-as-you-go model, this idea that you can scale and pay for what you use as you use it. Now, with that comes both opportunity but also potential risk in the sense that if you end up using a lot more than you thought, you will naturally pay more than you thought. So in most cases, to be honest, this is actually doesn't usually become as much of an issue, but there are a few tips and tricks along the way that we've picked up that I'll share with you. And the first is when it comes to modeling out the business case. One good thing to do is to sort of look for providers where they have a pricing model that correlates with your business model. So quite a common model in the cloud world is the per user per month or per user per year pricing. The great thing with that model is that you typically as a business are forecasting your resource needs over a reasonable horizon. So that allows you to have a reasonable idea of what your costs are likely to be. It also gives you a reasonable sort of way to measure and just gives you some surety of how things are going to track. And typically having things that, it means that the cost of the service scales with the size of your business, which is usually quite good. You can similar models for website. You can typically see that so much web capacity will be needed for so many users, and you can model out your customer base, for example. Probably a bigger area to make sure that you understand well is the license levels and the features that might occur at different license levels and the likelihood of needing to upsize. So quite important that if you are building a business case on consuming a software as a service application at one of the lower feature levels they have, say their entry levels license, do make sure and have a good look at what is offered in the next licenses up, and do consider how likely it is you are going to need them. So I've seen previously some providers, for example, don't offer their API functionality unless you're at a higher level, or don't offer certain features that an enterprise is likely to want until you're at a higher level. And it can be quite a painful step to make if you have to make a big shift of a whole lot of users from a lower level to a higher level. So do put some thought into that, and do model what would happen if that shift changed. Also look for providers who allow you to mix the user licenses within your organization. So a good example is Salesforce.com. You can have, in some areas, you can have some mix of different licenses in the business, some on platform, some on enterprise, which means that you don't have to have everyone on the same license level. And then also when planning, also do plan for some overage on per user licenses. Many people simply often just model the number of employees or FTEs they have in their business. What you also want to think is, who are the third parties that are going to need access, who's going to be administrating the system, do you need a user license for API access for third-party systems. So do plan on some overage on those per user licenses, and always make sure that you purchase a few more than you're likely to need. The next challenge is this idea of organisational change, being really common that people are worried, particularly in an IT team, that they're going to be out of a job if cloud comes along. I hear this quite a lot, and I guess the first thing is to acknowledge that it's a valid concern. I mean, why would you want to introduce fundamental transformation into your business if you feel the end result is going to be you no longer having a job in that business? So it is a real concern, and it affects people deeply. I think the important point is to discuss that IT roles are in constant change, and an example I like to use is that we've really only been building web applications in the enterprise for a bit over 10 years. With any real seriousness, and over, say, 15 years ago, many people were writing Power Builder, C, Delphi, whatever it might be, and we've all managed to make that transition from the desktop world into the internet world, if you like. And so really this shift from to the cloud world is just another simple transition. So really this should be a chance for people to see that this is them evolving in their role as an IT professional. This is them making that next shift. And also what we see is that although there is some roles will have some real change, many roles, it is a natural evolution. For example, we do a lot of work with Amazon Web Services, and in our business, the guys in our organisation who traditionally were managing the physical infrastructure for our clients, or even the VMware infrastructure, have made a really seamless transition to the Amazon world, and are really doing much of what they used to do, but now in a cloud way. So it is a pretty natural transition. For those roles where there is going to be quite a shift, I think the opportunity now is to look at how will individuals add more value to the business with cloud services. Given that someone else is now doing the undifferentiated heavy lifting, what could you now do as a business that would add some more value? And a really common one here is basically building out new bits of functionality, bringing to the business new innovations, new applications that the business can use to do things better. And because what this is about people being freed from keeping the lights on and now able to go and actually add value, which is a really great transition to make. Right, so those are the challenges and some of the high-level challenges and how to overcome them. In terms of some practical advice, the first is to manage change, and really what we see that with the transition to cloud, in many ways it is as much a change management exercise as it is a technology change. So do make change management a priority. You need to take people on the journey with you. You need to make people see that there is going to be change, but it's going to be positive change in the long run, and that you acknowledge that this is change to their jobs and the way they do things. And also really important, demonstrate some value quickly. A great way to do this is to focus on things that most people have to use. So, for example, mail and collaboration. Pretty much everyone in the business is using email. If you can quickly move to deliver email from the cloud with something like Google Apps, make it available on their mobile device, make it so they're much more flexible, able to work anywhere, anytime, any device, you're going to really get people buying into the idea that change is good and that change can benefit them. The next one is I guess what I'm calling core then more, which is really if you are planning out a roadmap and you're looking at how you are going to move, really think about the core cloud platforms that are going to enable you at a wholesale shift. So, for example, Google Apps, make that the core of your mail and collaboration platform. Amazon Web Services, select the core infrastructure as a service provider. Look at something like Salesforce.com. Is that going to be my application platform development platform? And because from there you're going to build. And also important for your core platforms, although it's always good to look for innovation, think about betting on the big boys, right? So if you are going to make a fundamental transition of your business, it is pretty important that you bet on put that money with some of these larger providers who aren't going to be disappearing overnight. So it's pretty likely that Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Salesforce and others are going to be around in the long term. So if you're going to make a bet, that's a good place to be. Even more importantly, look at those providers or those platforms that offer a platform as a service or a third-party ecosystem that can support extension. Because what you're going to find is once you've got these core platforms, how are you going to extend and shift those and build those out? And so having a platform as a service or sort of an app exchange, app store that you can add applications in is really going to help you with that, and is going to help you solve problems much more quickly. Also, make sure you think about how integration will be solved, be that using a product like Dell Boomi as a cloud integration platform or whatever integration tool that you have in-house, but make sure you're not going to go out and create data silos. All the large cloud platforms have great APIs, and it is entirely possible to integrate them together. Certainly that's the expertise that Fronde has developed over the years from our integration projects, so really think about integration. Changing business process, what you've got here with the transition to cloud is a real good chance to actually change some business processes and sort of fix things up. Because it's going to be a good time to do it, because it will be as a change management exercise, it's a technology change, so you can actually change some business process and optimize some things. Really slaughter some of those sacred cow processes that have been done for years and no one can quite remember why they're done. Why does that form have all those questions on it to start a new person in the business? Try and break those down and change and get rid of them as part of the transition. Also find the actual process owner. Who is the person who actually owns this process who can help you with the exercise of changing the business process, because you'll find that someone in the business might think they own the process, but actually they may not be the true business owner, and the person who thinks they own it are probably the ones who don't want to change it. So it's a great chance to do some business process optimization, to improve your processes and to give yourself some real change and flexibility. Also, another point is that you'll actually find that your costs are going to be lower as you'd expect, implementing, say, a software as a service application if you take on the business process that's baked into that product. So if there's nothing particularly special about your business process, why not look to implement the one that comes out of the box? It'll save you a lot of time, money, and effort. Another really good idea here is part of the change management in a way is to showcase and to create enthusiasm for change. What we've seen a bunch of customers do quite successfully is to create demonstration areas that let people experience new technology. So we've done this, we've done a sort of a customer experience exercise where we give customers a bunch of, say, Chrome devices and get them to access sort of modern software as a service applications for like Google Apps for mail and productivity, and sort of get people to experience what it could be like to use this technology. And that gets people really thinking about how an anywhere, any device environment could change their workplace. It gets them excited about what you might be able to do, and it also lets you identify change champions in the business who can make things work. It also lets you collect some feedback, and people can highlight issues that you might not have known would come up, and go on from there. So an example of that, one customer set up a demonstration area where they sort of had a mock office, a mock home workplace. They mocked up a little coffee shop and a meeting room, and sort of got people to experience using this modern cloud technology in those different environments to great effect. Segment, certainly a good idea to eat the elephant one bite at a time. So one option here is to look where hybrid approaches are possible. So where can you keep some of the traditional stuff going as you make a transition? You'll find it's easier in some areas than others. Certainly quite possible to do with infrastructure as a service, a bit less so when you're making a wholesale shift to mail and productivity. But certainly look to make it, you can quite easily these days straddle the on-premise and the cloud world as you make a shift. Identify those parts of the business that are ripe for a new approach and who are eager and keen for change, and certainly don't create a one-size-fits-all. You might find that you might need some different applications for different parts of the business because they have some different needs. And a really great way to get started, I've found, is to look for sweet spots in the business, like those who are currently unserviced by IT. A good example might be, say, a small marketing team. The IT team is really busy keeping the core ERP platform running, and the marketing team's been traditionally ignored. With cloud-based software as a service applications, say something like the Salesforce.com, you can really quickly stand them up in like an application for event management, for example, and really show some value quickly. Also, remote and branch offices are really ripe for adding cloud to, because they really relish actually having some real decent service delivered to them. And then a really important point is to measure. We all say we're going to do it. Many people, and most of us don't, but I've seen some great results from customers who have actually gone out and done surveys on the current state mood, and then actually measured how things have gone as they've done these transitions, particularly around things when they're rolling out Google Apps, getting people to sort of see how much more can I work remotely from the office, how much easier is it to collaborate with my colleagues, really getting that feedback and using the data to improve and create further impetus for change. Another important thing to do, obviously, is to compare the costs you're incurring versus your business case, just to make sure that you have actually got the returns you expected, and to see where you had made assumptions about, say, license levels that turned out to be incorrect. And I guess fundamentally, the message that I want you to take away is this idea that IT shouldn't constrain your business, it should liberate it. That you've got a great opportunity with these cloud platforms to radically shift the way that IT is delivered to your business. You've got a way to make yourself relevant to your business stakeholders, and you've got a way to really improve the productivity and, more importantly, the agility of your organization. So that was sort of the key stuff I wanted to cover. I've got for those of you who are able to hang on the line for a bit longer, we've got cover up a few questions that people have asked. So the first one is a question saying, which goes along the lines: the big software vendors like SAP and Oracle say they're doing cloud now. What is your view on their capability? Well, it's an interesting question. I think, and without singling out SAP and Oracle specifically, I guess one thing I'd just say is beware the false cloud. Which is that idea that just because someone puts a cloud label on something, it doesn't mean it is. What you want to be looking for is a true cloud solution will be something where there is no capex to get started, where you pay for what you use as you use it, and where you consume it via a browser or through an API. And that's what you want to look for, and that's what true cloud is. Unfortunately, neither SAP nor Oracle have really made great inroads in that area, but they are both enablers for cloud. And for example, things like SAP runs brilliantly on Amazon Web Services. Oracle Technologies run great on Amazon Web Services. So these guys are part of the cloud story, even if they themselves aren't leading it. But certainly what we are seeing is that, say, SAP and Oracle, with their traditional ERPs, their traditional middlewares, are finding it increasingly hard to compete with the software as a service providers, the likes of the NetSuites, the cloud integration products, the cloud CRMs like Salesforce.com, because that agility, the way that a business can quickly do things, is really causing some challenges. So I think they're in a race, those guys, and it's going to be very hard for them to catch up compared to the true cloud providers. The next question is, when weighing up the cost of choosing an on-premise solution funded in one hit as CapEx versus a cloud-based solution funded as an ongoing operational expense, how do you compare apples with apples? Yeah, so this is a challenge building out that business case. Really, one key thing here is to make sure that the horizon of your business case is appropriate. So if you build a relatively short horizon business case, what it often won't show is the cost of the upgrade to that on-premise solution. And that's one of the great benefits of cloud, is the fact that everyone's on the latest version, there aren't upgrades to be contended with, and so your ongoing cost is a known and reliable quantity. So certainly going beyond a 3-year business case out to a 5-year business case, and at least demonstrating what the cost of an upgrade is going to be, is pretty important. And then beyond that is making sure that you actually have a true appreciation for what the cost of an on-premise solution is going to be. It's very easy to ignore many of the costs that come with running things yourself, the cost of support, of operations, of keeping the lights on 24/7, all those kind of things. And with a cloud solution, that's all included in the price. So yeah, building up that apples and apples comparison can be quite challenging. Equally challenging is cloud solutions often bring with them some real softer benefits, I guess. So things like the benefit of anywhere and anytime, any device is something that has a real important improvement to an organization, but can be quite hard to actually quantify. And it really is a bit more of a, can be at times a bit of a holistic business case. So if you have got a particular challenge, it's something we do work with customers on, is to help them make sure that their business cases are correct and accurately reflect the model. I think the other side challenge to this is working with your finance organization to make sure that your budgeting processes don't favour CapEx, unreasonably favour CapEx over OpEx. What we see is that there are some of our customers, particularly those in, say, telco or utilities, where they have traditionally always favoured a CapEx project over an OpEx project, and do so almost blindly to the economies in the longer term. So yeah, it's going to require potentially some organisational change to get through that. Yeah, so you're building that business case as an exercise, and it's certainly something we do as part of our cloud transition professional services work, is to work with customers to build those out. I think the other really interesting point, it comes back again, is this idea of business agility. And the fact that with a cloud platform you can be much more responsive to change, you can alter and adjust your business much more rapidly. So really do value that agility. It's a really important factor. Okay, so we've run out of time. We've actually gone over time today. I think we've had a few more questions. So we'll reply to those via email when we get the chance, and also send you out a link to the recording of the webinar. So it's a really vast topic, and probably one that deserved a couple of hours rather than a half an hour. But hopefully it's given you some ideas and some thoughts as to how you can start leading the cloud journey in your organisation. And I think the really important point I want to make is that idea of leadership, because if you aren't out there leading this transition to the cloud, you are going to become irrelevant to your business stakeholders. They are going to go around you, and you are going to be seen as an anchor to their transformation. So go out there, help them change, and have some fun doing it. So thank you very much, and thank you for joining the webinar.